Okay, make sure you subscribe to the page if you're watching this on the 3 and Out new YouTube channel. Hammer that like button. Leave a comment as well. This is a little thing we call the mailbag, the Middlekauff mailbag. And the way you get in the mailbag is you go to my Instagram. It's just my name, @JohnMiddlekauff. You fire in those DMs and get your questions answered on the show. We will start with Riley. If Sean McDermott got fired in Buffalo, does Buffalo take a look at hiring Brian Daboll, given how it's going in New York? It's funny. Every Tuesday, I go on Gottlieb's radio show on Fox Sports, and we talk football. And he asked me that if Sean McDermott is relieved of his duties, what do you think happens? Do you think they could go try to get Brian Daboll? And I said, if this was college, the former offensive coordinator who goes somewhere else that they loved can save their quarterback, 100%. Brian Daboll would be the next coach of the Buffalo Bills. They would pay him an ungodly amount of money, and he would leave. That's the way college sports work, which is kind of fun, but also pisses the media off a lot. I really kind of entertained by it all. But I will say about this. In the National Football League, that does not happen. Sean Payton quit, said, I'm done. I'm burned out. I need a breather. Saints like, okay, we got to hire Dennis Allen, I guess. That sucks. And it does. And it did. And it has. And then he's like, actually, I feel refreshed. I want to coach again. Teams are sniffing around. Team offers me $90 million. The Saints are like, well, we would still rather have you as our coach. We're not just going to let you coach for them. We're going to trade you. And it's going to cost a first-round pick. And this guy, they already have a coach, was never going to coach for the Saints again, and they got a first-round pick. So if you're the Giants, even after this disastrous of a season, you could not risk losing Daboll, who obviously it's been pretty ugly, but just a year ago gave your fans hope, resurrected the franchise for a short period of time. Let's face it, it had been really, really ugly. And trade him to the Bills. Even if they trade him, I think you would say no. So I don't think that's an option. Now, the problem if you are the Bills, you have to hire an offensive coach if McDermott is let go after the season. 100%. It's not even an option. You have to hire but what offensive coach? Jim Harbaugh? Which might not be crazy. I think Jim Harbaugh and Josh Allen would have a lot in common. I think they would definitely sniff around that. I think hiring a coordinator is awfully risky. Even guys that are having success, the Kellen Moores, the Ben Johnson in Detroit, I don't know if you can risk that given how high your expectations are. So I think they're in kind of a tough spot. I think they would 100% want Brian Daboll. Not an option. I think Jim Harbaugh would be the most realistic guy that you feel comfortable with, who, former quarterback, even though he's wired a little bit more like a linebacker. But complicated situation for sure. Ryan, question for the pod. Have you ever considered doing a top 10 similar to the herd hierarchy? Curious to see who you would put in yours week to week. Not too much on the Vikings, LOL. I think the Vikings would be actually probably not in the top 10 because the AFC would have so many 10. Let's just go off the top of my head right now. Niners, Eagles, Chiefs, in whatever order you want. Ravens, Browns. I'm not writing off the Bengals yet. Bengals. Who am I forgetting? Dolphins, Lions. Listen, here's the thing with the power rankings. And listen, obviously the herd hierarchy, I got to get better at doing some of those things. That's why I do the Middlekauff mailbag, try to be consistent with trying to do this Tuesday therapy, just trying to add some landmarkers to the show. We're doing a lot of content. I sometimes with lists, and maybe this is, I got to get over myself on this. I'm not huge on, but they obviously work. So who's the dummy? Not Colin. I mean, obviously. Yeah, maybe a top 6 power ranking. Like I want a cool name for it. Like the Magnificent Seven. I don't know. I mean, you tell me. The Final Four. Give me some sort of name for it. Any guess to how the Jags go about paying Trevor Lawrence? Hasn't put up great numbers, but wins. Does he get a Burrow, Hurts, Lamar type deal? Well, if they're one and done or even barely win a playoff game, what's always the rush to pay the guys, right? Joe Burrow, Totally understand. Resurrects your franchise. Takes you to a fucking Super Bowl. Has you toe-to-toe the next year with Patrick Mahomes. Patrick Mahomes, MVP, Super Bowl championship, just kicking ass, taking names. Hell, Josh Allen, your franchise was dead. Trevor's good. He's good. I'm not paying him after this year. We're riding it out another year. I think sometimes we're addicted to paying people, and sometimes it's the right call, right? Sometimes you, like this offseason, you got to pay Micah Parsons. You had to pay Nick Bosa, right? You got to pay Joe Burrow. This offseason, you're going to have to pay Jamar Chase. Like, welcome to the big leagues. Trevor, like, who cares about 3 years ago? Everyone called you the greatest prospect of all time. I'm going to need more than 30 touchdowns from you. And right now, I think I just checked, he's got 9. So I hear you there. For mailbag, now it looks like Coach of the Year is a 2-man race between Dan Campbell and DeMeco Ryans. What do you think it will take for them to separate from each other and ultimately win the Coach of the Year race? I think if Dan Campbell is the number 2 seed or better, I think he has to get it. It's the Detroit Lions. It was Jared Goff. Nobody wanted him. What DeMeco's doing is unreal. But if they go 10-7, which is an awesome job, if Dan Campbell wins 13 or 14 games and is the 2 seed behind either the Eagles or the 49ers, or somehow gets the 1 seed, it's the Detroit freaking Lions. It's the Detroit freaking Lions. Jared Goff, nobody wanted that guy. Nobody would have taken that guy a couple years ago when they did. Nobody. The Detroit Lions. Like, ultimately, we can make fun of the Houston Texans, especially the last couple years. They were winning a lot. They were going to the playoffs a lot with Bill O'Brien. They were not some joke franchise. I think Dan Campbell's going to get it. I really do. I feel like it's going to be hard for him not to win it. There actually might not be a bigger lock right now than Dan Campbell being the Coach of the Year in the National Football League. Do McDermott and Staley both get let go, or just Staley? I think Staley will not be the coach of the Chargers. I would say McDermott's in some trouble. I would say McDermott's in a lot of trouble right now. And I think his actions are showing it. Anytime you fire the amount of coaches that he has, I mean, he fires defensive coordinator after the season, he fires offensive coordinator in the middle of the season, I think he's feeling the heat. And I think he's feeling the heat from the guys that sign the checks. And let's face it, when you're as rich as that ownership is, you don't get to live forever. You're paying this quarterback all this money. You're probably pretty impatient. You're probably really impatient. Even the amount of credibility Sean McDermott has brought to your franchise, him and Brandon Beane, I can't imagine those offices are really tense right now. I can't imagine that's a fun place. I really can't. First time mailbag question. What are your thoughts on this take Nick Wright had on Colin's podcast a few months ago? It's essentially giving each team an international game, so you would have 8 home, 8 road, and 1 international. He also alluded to giving each team another bye week this way. Thoughts? Well, just because you play internationally now does not guarantee you a bye week. So I get it in theory, and I actually don't hate the bye weeks, or excuse me, the international games. I don't know if there would be enough for every team. I guess every team could play a Thursday night game. Every team could play an international game. I don't think the partners, given AKA the owner / coaches, would want that. It's one thing to kind of be in the rotation. It's another thing to be the Jags and like playing over there a lot. It's another thing if you're Seattle or Arizona or the Rams or the Niners. Like, I don't want to fucking fly to England or Germany. So it's a pretty big pain in the ass geographically, depending on where you are. It's a lot easier to fly internationally when you're a New York team or Buffalo than if you're Seattle or Denver. So don't hate it. Like, I mean, you got to expand. You grow or you die. But I don't think it's essential. I don't think it's essential. But that's not the way you can think when you're growing your business. It doesn't necessarily have to be essential. It's just a healthy, positive movement for the league. Because you could argue, like, you just do the math. You're not technically, I guess every team now rotates, AFC, NFC, you get that extra home game. But for a long period of time, no one had an extra home game. You just had, right? You just had the 8 home games and 8 away games. So now that extra home game every other year is kind of gravy. But I do think the impact of flying for some teams is greater than other teams that far away. I wouldn't pound the table for it, I guess. If they did it, I wouldn't be up in arms and act like it was some travesty. but that's not something I would fight for. I wouldn't even be opposed to mandatory 2 bye weeks just the way they're doing it now. But here's the thing. The games is how you pay for everything. This is not the NBA. They're not looking to not have guys play. They're not looking to have games be irrelevant. Because when they play, a game is never irrelevant. You can put the Bears and Panthers and 9 million people watched. I think it was 10, actually. So I guess that's a long way of saying kind of indifferent. I know it's never going to happen with Kyle loving Purdy and Bo going high in the draft, but do you think Bo Nix is the perfect quarterback for the Shanahan offense? Well, isn't Brock Purdy currently the perfect quarterback? There is no, think about this. Brock Purdy, I saw someone tweet out, has the same stats as Jalen as a passer right now. Brock Purdy is 15. Brock Purdy's on pace for almost 30 touchdown passes. In like the height of Jimmy, he was struggling to get like 23, 24. So you're getting 6, 7 more touchdown passes with second-year Brock Purdy. If Brock Purdy gives you 30 touchdown passes and you win 12, 13 games, and he makes under $1 million a year, it's one of the greatest deals in the history of sports. Doesn't get any better than that. So they're just not even entertaining going with someone else. Never miss a show in you and Colin Sunday Conversations. Shouldn't we just change the MVP to most valuable passer? MVP, I understand quarterback is the most valuable player, but maybe we stop pretending it's an open competition. Totally agree. This would be a great year to make that argument. Like, ultimately, my bold take of the week on CJ Stroud, he's not going to be the MVP. But he has a better chance of winning MVP than Myles Garrett. But in a vacuum, CJ Stroud, like Myles Garrett is a better player. And honestly, they're both very, very important. You remove CJ from that team, they were in shambles. So this is a bad argument. But Myles Garrett, to me, I would vote for as the MVP of the league before CJ Stroud, or even Lamar Jackson right now, Patrick Mahomes. But he's just not going to win it. The award is going to go to, this is why we should rename it, to the quarterback who gets the hottest and his team has the best or second best record in his conference. So it's going to end up going to Patrick Mahomes, Lamar Jackson, Brock Purdy, Jalen Hurts. Just the way it's going to work. It's kind of sad because you watch Myles Garrett, you go, how many guys are playing better than this? How many guys right now are playing better than this? And the answer to me, you could argue he's the best player in the NFL this year. Remember Aaron Donald a couple years ago when it was just like, what are we watching here? Is this real life? The one year I thought J.J. Watt should have won it. And if he can't win it, if Aaron Donald can't win it, no one's winning it. Tyreek Hill, it's just, what are we doing? I'm with you. Let's just rename the award. Most valuable quarterback. Who is A&M going to hire? I was thinking about this the other day. A&M is a place when you're a coach at another school that's kind of miserable and you just want to go make a lot of money. Because Google the history books. You're not going to win big there. You got really no shot in the SEC. You are never going to be better than Alabama, than LSU, than Georgia, and Florida. And obviously, Florida's down, Bama's up. They'll rotate a little bit over the time, but you're not going to be those schools. And now Oklahoma and Texas are coming into your conference. Oklahoma historically is way better than you. And now that Texas just has some stability with their program, they're better than you. So they can get and pound the table about the money, which clearly they'll pay for. I just don't see how they're ever going to be a powerhouse. They'll have some moments. They have a bunch of talent. But to me, they're not a program that keeps me up at night. They're really not. And I think sometimes programs get overrated because they have a lot of money. And I think Texas A&M is a great example of that. Because like, oh, God, look how much they're paying everybody in NIL. Look how high all these recruits are. Look how awesome all their NFL prospects are. And then you look and they struggle to win 8 games. How are you going to get a good coach to go there? I saw Dan Lanning said, like, I'm not leaving here. In what world? Dan Lanning would have to be on crack cocaine to leave Oregon, who's going into the Big Ten, who's absolutely loaded. He's literally winning, and he has to answer to one human. One, Phil Knight. That's the ultimate decision maker of the program. You go to A&M, even if they can match your salary, it's way harder to win. You got to answer to a million people. It sucks. So to me, Dan Lanning saying, yeah, I'm not leaving, basically saying, like, I'm not going to Texas A&M. Of course you're not going to Texas A&M. Oregon is a infinitely better job than Texas A&M. It was 5 years ago. It was 10 years ago. It was 15 years ago. It is right now. I listened to all your podcasts last month. This is the Last Person podcast. Wanted to replace Purdy despite him winning and putting up good numbers. Is he going to be the next Cousins type player where every year people want to replace him and upgrade, but we look up in 10 years and he's won a shit ton of games and put up crazy stats? I'm not sure, but just something I was thinking about. Well, I think Cousins became very polarizing because he put up a lot of good stats and he was making a lot of money. When you don't make a lot of money, you can be polarizing, but people can only shit on you so much, right? You can't be the same critical of Dak Prescott as you can Brock Purdy. One guy makes 40, the other guy 40 million. One guy makes $790,000 and has practice squad roommates in the Bay Area. Now, the moment Purdy makes $40 million a year, $45 million a year, you get judged differently. Fair enough. I'm not saying if Purdy shits the bed in a second-round game that he wouldn't get crushed. He would. But how do you hold him to the same high standard? He was a seventh-round pick who makes nothing. What he's doing right now is remarkable because of that. It changed once Cousins started getting franchised and started getting these big contracts. It's like, we're paying you to win playoff games and dominate. And he would let a lot of people down in the regular season. And then he finally kind of figured it out these last couple of years. Like, God, Cousins looks pretty good. So I think there are some similarities. As players, they're a little different. I'd say Cousins has a slightly better arm. Purdy's a much better athlete. Cousins can't move. And I'm talking before the Achilles. Like, Cousins was stuck in the pocket. This guy, sneaky athlete, really, really explosive in short areas. Like, makes guys miss, keeps plays alive with his legs. Purdy's an impressive dude, man, as an athlete. I did not realize the 49ers were getting that when they drafted him. My only experience of dyeing hair was my frosted tips back in my teen years. So maybe I'm not the one to have a strong take on this, but I feel like you're being a little harsh on Robert Saleh. This feels like a situation when they're losing, we find everything to nitpick. If they were winning, would we say something like, man, this organization has things buttoned up, even down to the details of appearance? My point simply was, and I'm not being sarcastic at all, in what world in the NFL, when you're making $10 million a year and your team's not going that well, you're a good-looking guy, are you worried about some gray hairs on your beard? I think it's kind of a weird look. Look around the NFL. Pete Carroll wears shoes everyone makes fun of him for. The New Balance, whatever they're called. Kyle Shanahan's had gray on his beard for years. Sean McVay can get away kind of with the boy band hair, perfectly manicured, wins a lot, won a Super Bowl. You think Andy Reid's worried about the fucking way he looks, or Belichick? So I think when you get a little worried about the way you look, you're not, who are you recruiting? Who are you doing this for? Your girlfriend in the stands? I do think let's just have the conversation. Like, why is he coloring his beard? If his wife says he looks better, totally understand. Happy wife, happy life. She comes first. But he clearly has a lot of gray hair. He's got 7 kids. He's coaching Zach Wilson. Why is that even crossing his mind? Now, listen, I was insecure before I shaved my head. So maybe he's insecure about having some gray hairs. But, like, he's already bald. Who gives a shit? To me, the only thing he should be thinking about is, like, football. Why is he worried about the way he looks? Besides, I'm not saying, like, don't work out or whatever, but that is a level of, like, are we trying out for the Kardashians, or are we trying to beat the Patriots here? I'm not saying it's the end-all be-all. I'm not saying I'd fire the guy for it. But if I own the team, I might think a little differently of the guy. I'm paying you to win games, not fucking manicure every gray hair out of your appearance. I think that's fair. When it comes to the Patriots, is it possible between Belichick's extension and their 2-7 record that Bill and Kraft are giving each other a golden parachute? Bill gets one last payday, and the Pats get a top 5 pick. Well, Bill's definitely going to get a golden parachute, but Kraft, he is not trying to lose these games. Bill Belichick is trying every hour that he's not in that one girl's house that he made the walk of shame at. He's trying to win. Bill Belichick is not tanking at all. I'll promise you that. And I think you even know that when you're asking. That's the thing about the NFL. Everyone that loses a lot, they're trying to win. In baseball, like the A's, like do they just tank the last couple of years? Traded everybody, just waved the white flag. Happens in baseball a lot. Happens in basketball. Adam Silver's league is littered with tanking. In the NFL, maybe the last game. Remember how much shit Doug Peterson got for bringing in Sudfeld in that game? A couple years ago against the Giants? People freaked. No one. That's why we make fun of like Eberflus and Frank Reich. Like they're trying to win. They're not even just trying to win. They're spending 15, 18 hours a day at the office doing everything humanly possible to win a game. And they can't. They can't win. I can't even imagine the hours. Belichick, Bill O'Brien, Joe Judge, those guys are spending at the offense. They're spending at the office to have 6 points on the board in Frankfurt, Germany. That's why I couldn't have worked in football long. It's one thing when you're winning, putting the time, like Super Bowl champions, become legends. I could never put in the time when the team sucked. I'd be like, what are we doing this for? We could spend 70 hours a day at the office. Mac Jones sucks. Our offensive line ain't blocking a soul. We can't cover anybody. So you can diagram every fucking play you want. Godspeed when the ball's kicked off, because we are screwed. But these guys are sickos. And Belichick probably thinks that maybe he could win an extra couple games with Bailey Zappi. That's why I would imagine Bailey Zappi is going to be the quarterback of the New England Patriots.